In China, young people under 18 will only be allowed to play video games up to 3 hours a week after the government announced new restrictions. Esports organizations have been working to comply with these new regulations by removing minors from their competitive rosters. So what does this mean for the Chinese gaming scene as a whole? Let's talk about it. Alright, so before I explain all these new policies and how they're going to impact the Chinese gaming scene, I gotta remind you to check out our new show, Cracked, which combines the world of tech and esports. Be sure to check out our latest episode, which teaches you how to optimize your in-game settings, presented by AMD. So, this all started when Chinese state news agency Xinhua reported on August 30th that starting September 1st, China's National Press and Publication Administration would start to curb the time young people spent on playing video games. The new regulations say that developers can allow their online game services to be only played by minors, so anyone under 18, from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, as well as holidays. And online game services, not a super detailed definition, but as far as I can tell, that means online platforms like Steam and plain old online games like League of Legends will be affected by this. Also, developers must make sure that people are logging in with their quote real name registration and logins and prevent anyone that fails to do so from playing. It's important to note that this is not a new law. Rather, this is a new policy that companies must abide by. And it makes sense that given in the past, gaming has been called a spiritual opium by a state publication. That article was later then taken down and then reposted without that term being in it, but... Then on September 9th, the South China Morning Post reported that China would actually halt on approving new online games. The NPPA, which is in charge of licensing video games in the country, has not published the list of approved titles for August, breaking its routine of announcing newly licensed games either in the middle or at the end of each month since May 2019. Between 80 to 100 games are usually approved each month. Later on October 1st, the Associated Press reported that further restrictions would be put onto games, but this time regarding in-game content. Specifically, there would be a ban on, quote, effeminate males, gay relationships, and games that had no distinct or clear moral choices. Now, this all might sound a little jarring to you. If you're anything like me, after work you hop into Discord and play a little bit of everything for as long as you can before you go to bed. If you go to bed.
China bans under 18s from playing video games more than 3 hours a week? Huh? A week?
But in order to explain how this happened, why it's actually not that shocking, I gotta bring you back and explain how we got to this point. Now, it's also important to say that China is a country of over 1 billion people with an incredibly long history and a very complex government. The situation is much more nuanced than a video like this can cover in the time we have today. China has been worried about adverse reactions to video games, specifically addiction to them. For an example as to why this might be, in 2011, a man lost consciousness in a gaming cafe outside of Beijing after it was reported he did not eat or sleep much for 3 days. He later died. According to the South China Morning Post, this past March, President Xi Jinping, quote, explicitly listed game addiction as a concern for the psychological health of the country's teens. China has tried to remedy this with private army-like camps made to treat web addiction with methods that include beatings, solitary confinement, and electroshock therapy. This has led to injuries and deaths in the children that attend these camps, with some of these camp facilitators being brought before a court. While gaming addiction is a growing problem across the world, people have noticed that this is a symptom of a much larger issue of toxic work cultures.
You know, are video games kind of addictive? Yeah, absolutely, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I think that what people here are missing is that there's a confluence of events that gets young people uninterested in participating in society. And then when I choose not to participate in society because I don't get paid enough, I don't get enough respect, I don't enjoy my job, it's not fulfilling, then I choose not to participate in society. And when I choose not to participate in society, what do I do with all my time? And so what I end up doing with all my time is like video games.
These new regulations are also part of a recent crackdown the Chinese government has had on their tech and entertainment industries. Rules and regulations like this aren't new to the Chinese gaming scene. In 2019, similar but less harsh regulations were put in that barred minors from playing games from the hours of 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. with a time limit of 90 minutes. National holidays were the exception with a time limit of 3 hours. Fortune also reported that, quote, the rules instituted in 2019 created content guidelines that banned gory images like blood, promoted Chinese culture, and said gambling-like features such as loot boxes must be labeled with the odds of winning. Censorship is nothing new to China. China has outright banned media from being shown in the country that they simply don't want to be seen. Some of you may remember when Battlefield 4 was banned for being sold in the country, or when the censorship of any images that connected President Xi Jinping and Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh looking motherfucker.
Despite all of this, there are still major concerns by the Chinese esports scene. In order to become a pro player, you obviously have to practice your game. But if you're only allowed to play up to 3 hours a week, how could you possibly get good or even learn to like a game? Now, if you're anything like me, you might think that young kids could possibly dodge this by using a VPN or a separate adult account. But like I said, that could become increasingly hard when you're forced to use your real name and information, and the developers are being asked to take an extra security step by the government. Tencent actually announced that they'll be using AI and facial recognition to help comply with these new regulations. It's about to get real hard to smurf in China. And just to show how these regulations are being upheld, Fortune reported on an incident where at 3 a.m., a player managed to get a pentakill in the ever-popular mobile game Honor of Kings. A fellow player noticed that the pentakiller's account belonged to a 60-year-old, gaming profiles in China display birth years, and posted it on China's Twitter-like Weibo. The post went viral, and Weibo users concluded that the skilled gamer was likely not a 60-year-old at all, but rather a kid who had swiped a relative's phone. Tencent said the gamer's profile had passed 17 facial recognition age checks this year. Still, it couldn't definitively conclude that a sexagenarian had executed the pentakill, and therefore couldn't rule out that the player had violated draconian video game laws that China had made even stricter on September 1st. With all this being said, Chinese players have been working, playing, and practicing with these types of restrictions since 2019. And China's performance hasn't been bad at all. They've often dominated League of Legends in the past few years, and RNG won MSI back in May. And it's not just China who's had to practice under these types of restrictions. In 2011, a law was introduced in South Korea that prohibited anyone under 16 from playing video games between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. That law, either known as the Shutdown Law or the Cinderella Law, will actually be rolled back and allow for parents and guardians to choose their specific curfews. Young players have still come from internet cafes, then to academy teams, and then to the main rosters, and they are all still powerhouses. But we have not seen regulations as strict as China's most recent development. Some people are happy with the regulations, saying this will fix a large problem regarding kids and games. On the other hand, there are people sharing major concerns with privacy and government control. After all, it is your face and name that will be used to prove your identity. The New York Times reported that an esports professional, Hao Shu, who owns a training center, said there are enough players in the mix to sustain the scene for now, so effects from these restrictions might not be felt for a while. However, the South China Morning Post reported that an esports technical director named Warren Lee said, quote, "Under this new regulation, there is pretty much zero chance to train the next generation of esports competitors. Personally, I can't imagine what this means for esports team owners in China right now." And he may have a point. In the days after the first regulations were announced, Ren LPL reported from a translated Weibo post that the League of Legends Development League, or LDL, was complying with them by blocking anyone who was under 18 from competing. They also delayed matches that were supposed to happen that week as rosters probably scrambled to fill the now empty spots. As of September 2nd, about 31 players have been dropped from the LPL and LDL for being under 18. This includes 17-year-old Lin Cream John, who just won Rookie of the Split at the LPL 2021 Summer Split. He has since been removed from his team's roster on his organization's website. Now, despite all of this, we're only still about a month into these new restrictions. While there have been immediate consequences, we still don't know what the long-term effects on the Chinese esports scene will be. And the same goes for the content bans. We don't know how games will be changed to be released in China, if they'll be changed at all, and how this will affect original Chinese games. Only time will tell how this will all play out and if China will place further restrictions on their games and the people that play them. Then, on September 9th, it's out.
There's this other girl who could sing like.
Oh god, Colten, have fun with that one. Rules and regulations like this aren't new to the Chinese gaming scene. Yeah. Gaming scene. The gaming scene. You get a high five, Danny.
So much.
Not Keith, though. What's something that Winnie the Pooh says? That's like.
I don't know if he has a catchphrase. I suppose you're right. He says stuff like that.
Wait, why are you so good at it, Danny? Why are you so good at that?
And then there's Tigger. I didn't know I could do that. That kind of shocked me too, to be fair.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Honestly.